You talk about a little bit about your story. So can you take us back to your early years and share what it was like growing up? What I mentioned to, which in the beginning of this, in
Yeah.
the cult.
You know, I think sometimes it's hard to know you're in a cult till you're not in it anymore. I started going to school at 5 and then we joined the church at 10. And so it became my entire life, right? I was
Hmm.
at school Monday through Friday there. And I went there from first grade all the way to senior year of high school. The big switch for me was as a person and then translated into my leadership that helped my curiosity was the recognition that validation is not external.
Hmm.
I am valid and I am valuable simply because empathy is necessary. And trying to understand the lived experience of people outside of us is necessary. And I like to break this down in hard numbers for people to sit with, right? So the United States, the population of the United States, Americans, only make up 4.34% of the global population.
Wow.
I want us to sit with that, right? Only 4.34% of the global population. Number one, pin that. Number two, white people only make...
She grew up inside a cult where control was the rule and curiosity was forbidden, but she broke free and transformed that pain into power. Today, Shana Francesca is a global voice for ethical leadership, intentional living, and courage to design your own life. Her story isn't just about survival, it's about building communities, companies, and cultures where everyone is valued and empowered. In this episode, how she turned trauma into purpose and how you can too. Hey there. Look, my hope is that the Thrivewell journey meets you exactly where you are and helps you rise into who you're here to be. It's 2025 and this is your year to thrive despite what the world is throwing at us. And our desire is that our conversations inspire you, bring clarity, and give you a reason to breathe deeper. So our ask is that you take a moment to subscribe, download the episode, and follow us on your favorite RSS platform. Your support doesn't just help the show grow, it helps build a space that's rooted in your evolution. And that means everything to me and the TTJ team. Now, if you're ready to go beyond the episodes, come join our private Thrivewell Journey discussion group on Facebook. We're walking through a 22-week series built to anchor each week in intention, purpose, and meaningful connection. I do so look forward to hearing your voice and can't wait to see you in the group. But for right now, let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Shana. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Woo, that was a great intro. Thanks for that.
I work on those things.
I can tell. I can tell. Most people just read the bio that I give them, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I loved that you didn't do that. That was great. Thanks for that.
I try to, create some wonder around who we have on the show.
Yeah.
And when myself and Yvonne, we got to read about your story, it was very intriguing to us. And so just go back before we get into who you are today and the wonderful purpose that you're living. You talk about a little bit about your story. So can you take us back to your early years and share what it was like growing up, what I mentioned to, which in the beginning of this, in the cult.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's hard to know you're in a cult till you're not in it anymore.
Yeah.
Especially when you're raised in it. Right. And, I started going to the school that was part of the religious institution that we eventually joined and became this very cult-like institution. I started going to school at 5 and then we joined the church at 10. And so it became my entire life, right? I was at school Monday through Friday there. And I went there from first grade all the way to senior year of high school. Right. Okay. And then also part of the church. And, when you're in that environment, just like in a household, depending on where you are inside the institution depends on your experience, right? Yeah. So there's some people who either attended that school or attended the church and did not have the experience I had. But there were many people who did, right? Those of us who were a little bit closer to the inner circle, who were in leadership, so on and so forth, got to see things that other people didn't get to see. The hiding of abuse, the hiding of pedophilia, the the intimidation tactics that were used to silence people, the obfuscating of the truth, right? We're just not going to say the truth. We're going to say something entirely otherwise. The children of the head pastor were hiding the fact that he had dementia for like almost a decade.
Oh, wow.
And he was responsible for people. We knew something was off, but we thought they would tell us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's 1,500 people at that time, inside this congregation, looking to this person who really needed to be being taken care of, who didn't need to be responsible for our spiritual, right? But his children didn't want to let go of the power that it gave them to be, part of, with him as the head pastor, so on and so forth, and ended up being investigated by the FBI. The church was making investments in tax liens. If you're not familiar with that, it's perfectly legal, but churches are given tax exempt status so that they invest in communities. If you're not familiar with tax liens, you can buy up somebody's back taxes on their home, which us having to pay property taxes on a house that we've only purchased once every single year is a whole other conversation. But you can, in fact, purchase somebody's back taxes and they have a year to pay you back. And if they don't, and you can charge them maximum interest in New Jersey is 17%.
Oh,
this is clearly already somebody struggling financially, that now you're putting this significant tax on their tax, right?
Yeah.
And now you're requiring them to pay it back. And the church would, in fact, take those properties when people couldn't pay it back. And so there was both unethical behavior and illegal behavior. The church was mandated reporters, and they hid the fact that my father was a pedophile, and never reported it. As a matter of fact, they counseled my mother that that's the avenue he chose because she wasn't being as godly a wife as she should have been. And so this is the kind of harmful ideology that doesn't start out that way, but it gets that way when we divest from curiosity, respect, and accountability, which is why my work is built on that. Because I realized what was missing in those environments, and growing up in a place where child labor is normalized, although it's like, oh, you'll get to miss class to help us set up for this event that they're renting our facilities. You know what I mean? Like this kind of, and it becomes like a reward. But child labor should never be a reward.
No, never.
And that shouldn't be normalized, that you laboring for adults for free is in fact, something beneficial. And as a neurodivergent person who was constantly told I was bad and wrong because I couldn't sit still in a chair, being used, in a way that let me get my energy out sounded enticing to me, but then I missed out on necessary education. Right. And so, there's a lot of conversations to be had just in that reality, right? We could have like 17 different conversations, but there was so much, and so many people are still reeling today. There was a couple of people I know who've been institutionalized, because their mental health was just so fractured from being inside of this organization. And so many of us have complex PTSD and had to go to therapy for years and so on. So the financial toll and the mental toll and the physical toll that it takes on you takes decades to repair.
Right.
Decades.
I can imagine. And this, as you were, first of all, thank you for sharing that part of you. And when you were sharing that, I was thinking, like, how does one that has been, indoctrinated in that world, and they're like, okay, wait, something's going on.
Yeah.
What was that shift and that change that you began to recognize, so that got you out of that space?
I had always had, that's a good question. I had always had questions, but people loved to use thought-stopping cliches to get me to stop thinking, right? Like that's the whole point. They're thought-stopping cliches. Like God's ways are higher than our ways. Right.
Okay.
That was always the favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that.
Right. I'm not required to worship something, a physical being. And I no longer believe in a sky daddy. That's how I like to call him. Sorry if that's disrespectful to anyone's beliefs. I just don't happen to believe in a singular puppet master in the sky anymore. I believe that there's something that gives life in all of us, and to honor that in all living things is our greatest duty. But, I would think, I would be told that God, as I was presented with him, was always this dominating male figure, was all powerful and all knowing, and yet constantly refused to actually protect me or reveal himself or any of those things. And my questions compounded. Compounded and compounded. And at first I let them go. And I was just like, yeah, God's ways are higher than our ways. But then when the people who were supposed to be standing between me and God and helping direct me to God, when I saw the things that they were doing that were causing so much harm, even in the cult that I grew up in, and then the subsequent churches I attended after, because I left and I was like, well, maybe it's just that church.
Yeah.
And then I started going to other churches and the same pattern arose. They were trying to become what I had just left. Refusing to be financially open and honest, or, not wanting to be held accountable, skewing stories, right? Like, you see that there's accountability is looking the thing in the face, right? And taking accountability and responsibility for the impact. And if you're constantly obfuscating the impact and pretending it's not that bad, right? Meanwhile, the people impacted aren't being given a voice to say whether or not it hurt them that bad. And by the time they are given, they've been gaslit so much, the truth has been so skewed, right?
Right.
And so you start to see all these things and you're just like, for me, at least, I was like, shoot, I don't think I can be part. I didn't say shoot, but that's the PG version. Shoot, I don't think I can be part of, right? I don't think what I'm looking for can be found inside of, whether it be the denomination I grew up in or non-denominational churches or so on and so forth. And I looked and I was like, I'm not finding a place that feels human, that feels humane, that feels like we're honoring one another. I'm not finding that, right? I'm just finding, the last church I went to, I ended up talking to the pastor, and I said, I feel like in the Good Samaritan, we are the people stepping over the bodies. And he's like, I agree with you. He had no plan of action to change that or desire to, and never came back to me with one. And ultimately, when I left there is when I fully started deconstructing, right? Like before then, I left the cult because I saw all the harm. And I was like, there's no part of this that's okay. There's no part of this that Jesus would be okay with, right? Jesus would be tearing down the temple. Jesus would be throwing over the tables. Jesus would be telling them they're whitewashed tombs. I don't see Jesus in this place. But by the time I had gone to so many other churches and seen the same behavior, I was like, maybe church isn't for me. I'm just going to worship God directly. And then without all of the voices telling me how I should interpret things and just interpreting it for myself, I finally was like, I actually don't think I believe any of this. I think Jesus was an incredible figure. If he was real, he was an incredible figure. I think he did incredible things. I think he truly put forward ideas we should be embracing. But I don't think that I can reconcile this figure that claims to be all powerful and all knowing and yet is not benevolent, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
I can't reconcile those things. I can't say that he's benevolent and does the things that he does being all powerful and all knowing. I can't reconcile those things anymore. And so it kind of all fell apart for me accidentally. I did not mean. It was not like I went into it questioning. It was just that I guess the questions stopped being silenced and then I couldn't not hear them anymore. And so there was always this questioning that was happening for a long time, from the time I was probably 12 or 13, but I didn't officially leave the church and leave the ideology until I was 34.
Okay. Wow.
That's a long answer. I know. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, but you know what? It gives me an understanding of, who you are and what stages that you went through. It wasn't just like a straight drop off. You had to curate this understanding of who you are and the spaces that you've gone through, and I totally understand that. So you went through this, and what was the pivotal moment that was just like, no more, I got this figured out for myself?
I think it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I was always in leadership in every church I ever attended. I very quickly would join leadership, volunteer, and then be in leadership. And so in the last church I attended, one of the fellow leader volunteers looked at someone who was asking about the sermon that had just been preached and was like, hey, I have a question about something that the pastor said, and I want to ask him about it. It was a perfectly reasonable question. Don't ask me what it was. I can't remember.
Okay.
And this person said, hey, I think I'm just going to email the pastor and like ask him. And I was like, that's a great idea. I think you should do that.
Mhm.
And the other volunteer leader said, oh no, we don't question the pastor. And I was like, oh.
So then,
But that pastor's a human being.
Yeah.
They're not actually God, and we shouldn't hold human beings on pedestals and
Right. Yeah. I
right.
agree
And
with
so
that.
like inside of any organization, accountability is required for a healthy, respectful, ethical environment. And absent of that, like if it's already made its way into leadership, it's because it's coming from on high. It's filtering its way down. That hasn't been
Top down.
interrupted. Right. In a hierarchical environment, it's coming top down. And I was like, whoa, that's scary. And that's when I had that conversation with him where I said, I think we're, it was right after George Floyd's death and, 2020. And I was like, where are we? Why are we not in the streets? Why are we not speaking up? Why are we as a diverse, group of people worshiping God together? Why are we not standing up for human rights, for basic human rights? Why are we not in the streets? And why are we not even just in the streets, but why are we not having that conversation inside the church too? Right? Like, I don't understand. And he didn't have an explanation. And I was like, okay. And then I found out that they had brought on staff somebody who was credibly accused of sexual violence on the church property.
Oh, wow.
And had been a volunteer. And then they brought him onto staff. And I was like, yeah, I'm out. I at that point, I just couldn't do it anymore. There was too many fractures. And it was just like, I think the problem is the ideology. The problem is constantly fostering an environment where accountability is left out on purpose.
Yeah.
Or respect is applied differently based on who you are inside of an organization and how you are being marginalized in society in general. Right. So if you're just a little bit more respectful than society in general, well, then you're doing well. That's not what Jesus said. That's not what, right. And so it was just, it got to the place where I was like, I can either continue to follow this ideology or I can reclaim my humanity. And I don't actually need someone threatening me with hell to show up in humane ways and fight for human rights. I don't need that. And so if that's true, I'll just worship God on my own. So that was the final straw.
That was the final straw. And in that space, I'm hearing that you reclaim your humanity. And in this time, you were in corporate America, right? Still?
I had just left.
Yeah,
I had just left a year before. Yeah.
Okay. And all the stuff that we just talked about, that created who you were in this moment, and you're now experiencing yourself as being human, experiencing this humanity. And when did you actually begin to build your business? Because I wanted to kind of do a little shift here, because based on all this stuff that we talked about, it just seems like when you began to have your own company, a lot of what you've endured and went through,
it came with me.
Yeah, it came with you. And you began to, but you talk about, true leadership, and it's based on ethical relationships. And can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So this is the bridge, right? The bridge is growing up in a cult. I experienced what happens when we aren't invested in ethical leadership and relationship, the dire consequences for us, for our humanity, both individually and collectively. And so when I left that at 26, I started doing research on my own of looking for models for healthy leadership and relationships so that I could show up in the world in ways that felt honest and felt like, because we know when we're doing something that's crappy, that's hurting someone else.
Yeah.
We know, we
Yeah.
can feel it. We carry it with us,
Yes.
behind us. We drag it with us into every moment of the day. We know, unless you're a sociopath, right?
Yeah.
And so like I was dragging all this with me, and I'm like, something's not right. And I have to do something to show up as who I am. And I don't even know what that means. And I don't even know how to tap into that. And so I started doing that research for myself entirely selfishly.
Mm-hmm.
And then, about 6 or 8 years about 6 years in, I'm, in my early 30s, and I'm like, hey, having these powerful conversations with other people. I'm leading these like group coaching sessions with like 14 people. I worked with like 100 people over 2.5 years. And I was like, there's something super powerful here,
Mm-hmm.
right? That apparently no one else is talking about. And then I took a break because it was mid-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
In like 2021, 2022, I had rebranded my business to the name Consonate, which is essentially like harmony by design, right? That's what it means. It's a real word. It goes into more than that. You should definitely look it up.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful word. Yeah. And the
It's a
definition
note
is
I wrote
really
for myself.
powerful. Yeah. No, it's really beautiful. I have my phone here. I could look it up, but I won't bother. But I definitely recommend that people look it up. I have the definition on my website, I think, too. So, I rebrand, I write my company values.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were my values, right? And I start moving towards speaking and consulting because it was always there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was always wanting to have these conversations and what I was learning and how I was reconnecting to my humanity and how it showed up in my leadership, right? Because anything we want to do as a leader shows up in our private life first.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who we are as a person is always reflected in our leadership. Even if you try to hide it, it will leak out.
Yeah.
And it'll leak out big time. When you're least expecting it or least want it to. Our insecurities, all of it, they will become very present, and everyone around us will see them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I wanted to be the kind of person who could sit with accountability, who could sit with what does it mean to actually be curious about others, especially for me as somebody who was raised in a cult and struggled with needing and wanting to be heard because I was never heard. I was never valued. People actually did listen and hear what I had to say, but then they would, to my face, tell me it wasn't valuable, then steal my ideas and implement them.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Wow.
Which happens a lot with very narcissistic
Yeah.
environments, right? Yeah. And so I knew that what I had to say was valuable. I just needed to find the people who actually knew it to have value and who were going to pay, right? And respect it and honor it and pay me for my contribution, right? And I wish we didn't have to pay each other for our contributions, but we live in a capitalist world. We got to survive somehow, right?
Yeah.
So, that ultimately was what led to my work. I didn't seek to do what I am doing right now. It just made the most sense. It was like you have now, when I made that change, I had nearly a decade worth of research, or a decade of research, because it's now been 14, 15 years. I had a decade of research under my belt and had formed all of these powerful ideas and knew that people were connecting with them, and had been told dozens of times, no one's talking about leadership this way. You need to get on stages. And I was like, great, point me in the direction, get me on a stage, right?
Yeah.
And then that just, kind of snowballed into where we are now.
And I mean, I'm listening to you now, and this is the first time I heard you, and it's very engaging. From how you're telling the story to the way that you tell your story, and you talked about your insecurities or who you truly are will begin to create, they'll show. And one of the things I'll talk about, especially here as one of our principles, I guess you could say, is really work on you as a human being. Those issues that you may not be great at, just continue to build yourself in those areas, because who you are will seep out. And if you try to hide all that crap, and the crap will show at some point. And you talked about curiosity, and I wanted to ask you, in leadership, what is essential for leaders to be constantly curious about, and respecting and you talk about accountabilities. And so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the most successful leaders of all time, long term, have been the most curious people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They knew they didn't know everything. They surrounded themselves with people who knew things they didn't know
Mm-hmm.
and were very smart
Yeah.
in things that they had no knowledge or understanding of. And we cannot and should not try to know everything.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. And it's ridiculous.
It is.
It's a ridiculous pursuit, and it's a waste of your time.
Right.
Surround yourself with incredible people, but surround yourself with incredible people who will long-term know themselves to be safe, to be seen, heard, understood, valued, and cared for.
Mm-hmm.
As a part of your life and or your organization. You have to become the kind of person who's invested in those things for yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of societal messages that we have to confront that has to come first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the big switch for me was, as a person and then translated into my leadership, that helped my curiosity was the recognition that validation is not external.
Mm-hmm.
I am valid and I am valuable simply because I exist.
Yeah.
No amount of productivity, no amount of contribution, no amount of any of that determines my worth or value.
Mm-hmm.
I exist separate from those things. I exist without those things. And I am valuable simply because I exist.
Here on the Thrivewell Journey, we talk a lot about not just surviving, but thriving. And a big part of that for me has been understanding my health on a deeper level. That's why I partnered with Live Good and brought it under my company, Orion's Health. Not just because I believe in the products, but because I've seen what they can do firsthand. I've walked through some hard health chapters in my life, including cancer and a kidney transplant. And I know what it feels like when your body's working against you. That's why we're offering 2 free tools that help me and can help you too. First, go to myfreehealthreport.com/Orion's Health. Take our quick health questionnaire and get a personalized report created by Dr. Ryan Goodkin, Live Good's Director of Product Development. It's clear, actionable, and totally free. Second, visit myfreedetox.com and get a free chlorophyll and zeolite detox bottle with your first product order. It's a gentle, natural way to clear out toxins and start fresh, something I personally use and stand behind. This isn't just a sponsorship, it's part of my mission through Orion's Health to help people thrive in body, mind, and spirit. Of course, always consult your physician before starting any new supplement or health regimen. Your body is unique, and your healthcare provider should always be part of the conversation. The links are in the show notes. Now tap in and take your next step toward thriving. Mm-hmm.
And then when you enter the room, you enter in differently. You're not entering the room with ego. You're not entering the room to eclipse or dominate. You're entering the room to be a part of. To be a part of community, to be a part of, we as human beings are part of nature, to be a part of the ecosystems that we are meant to exist as a part of. Because healthy relationship, that's what it is. It's an ecosystem of relationships.
Yeah.
An ecosystem of ideas, thoughts, exchanges, right?
Yeah.
And so for us as leaders, we have to be curious. We have to be talking to people at every level of our organization. We have to be talking to people that we don't like. We have to be hiring people who are perfectly capable, who we don't like. I'm not talking about hiring people who are purposely, going to try to destroy our organization or destroy our culture. But if your culture is not inclusive, and if your culture doesn't make space for a diverse array of human beings, you are going to fail. And we know that in hard numbers, right? So our curiosity is necessary to facilitate the kind of environment where a diverse array of human beings are seen, heard, understood, valued, can bring their entire thriving selves, because we're contributing to their thriving. So then they're contributing to ours. Right. And so it starts there. It has to be there. Right. And that's why I talk with leaders about relationship first. We can't talk about anything else until we talk about how you understand relationship, and you understand how to build the kind of relationships that will create the kind of culture that will bring in the kind of people and foster the kind of environment that drives creativity, innovation, and profitability. It has to start with relationship. It has to start there. We start with curiosity, and you look at CEOs like or leaders like Massimo Bottura and his 3 Michelin star restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
You look at organizations like the ESOP out of Delaware, that is Gore and Associates. You look at King Arthur Baking Company. You look at Stewart's Shops, the gas and convenience store station that's up in the Northeast. You look at the way that Pixar used to run their organization. I'm not sure if their leadership might have changed some things over the last couple of years, because I think they've been struggling a little bit, but you look at their kind of old school philosophies. You look at all these different organizations, how Campbell's Soup, their last CEO transformed that organization. You can look and see that curiosity was the bedrock of it all.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think just being curious about life, and then you talked about it earlier, just being curious about life, it really takes you on a path of just exploration. And I think that's what we need. And can you share a specific example from your work with ethical leadership? Just ethical. Yeah, leave it there.
Yeah. I have different kinds of conversations with different people. And one of the ones I've been having more often is about neurodiversity. And for those who don't know, neurodiversity is a classification for those of us who are diagnosed with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia. And there's a lot of conversations being had right now because certain people are trying to invalidate our existence or call us an epidemic of diagnoses, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, it's not. It's just that before 1984, people like myself could be forcibly institutionalized, lobotomized, and sterilized. And so we had to hide our identity in order to assimilate, in order to not have violent action taken against us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have conversations that go back to curiosity with leaders who are looking to, bring about successful organizations. And we talk about diversity as a part of necessary biodiversity, right? Because if we didn't have neurodiversity, if we didn't have that and we didn't have biodiversity, one virus, one harmful ideology could wipe out the entire human species like that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So diversity is a necessary part of the human species' perpetuation, survival, and success, right? And so when I look at it, I can see the light in their eyes change, right? When I say this to them, right? Because it also gives them a powerful talk track for like they're bored, right? right. And say that, it's like, oh shoot. And then I followed up with the hard numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at them and I say, Citibank taught us. They came out with a study that came out in 2020. Right, Citibank, that said the U.S. economy, still currently one of the greatest economies in the world, lost out on $16 trillion due to a lack of diversity. For let's put trillion in a perspective, because a lot of times we have a hard time wrapping ourselves around what a trillion actually is, right?
Yeah.
So a million seconds is about 12 days.
Okay.
A billion seconds is about 32 years. Billion.
That's
12 days, 32 years, right? That's why billionaires don't need to exist. Moving on. So trillion, right? A trillion is 32,688 years.
That blows up the scope right there.
And the U.S. economy lost out on $16 trillion
that's
due to a lack of diversity.
That's kind of important now, especially with the assault on what diversity is for us today.
Yeah. And a lot of people falsely don't even know what DEI stands for, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And also don't understand its purpose and believe the false narrative because they don't know what it is. Maybe they weren't exposed, so on and so forth, that it's about giving somebody who has no merit a job. And that's not it at all.
That's not it.
It's looking at everyone who has merit and has the qualifications for that job and not being legally allowed, which is already illegal anyway, but not being legally allowed to, in fact, dismiss somebody for their race, gender, intersectional identity, whatever it is, right? And recognizing that and by having DEI initiatives, creating the kind of cultures that actually make it safe for a diverse group of people to exist inside of an organization. And I'm going to speak as a white neurodivergent woman for just a second and say, as a white neurodivergent woman, how I experienced adverse consequences of being a neurodivergent person inside of an organization because there was no giving a darn about DEI, about the diverse group of people that they were actually supposed to lead, right? I had a boss look me in the face and tell me that he kept over $20,000 of my commission because it was only my second year in sales. And, that, even though I had worked 30 days straight as a salaried worker, so no overtime, because he abandoned me to respond to 3 RFPs for the government on my own. I worked incredible amounts of hours. I had nearly killed myself. I was on the brink of complete and total burnout. I was getting sick all of the time because I could analyze so much information and I could put out so much information so quickly. I was unduly burdened with the job of 3 different people. And it nearly killed me. And they stole my money and told me to my face. Yeah. I never got it in writing, so it was hard for me to fight legally.
Yeah.
But he felt so confident and he told me to my face. Now, had there been more accountability inside of that organization, had there been proper understanding of what leadership is, had there been initiatives for a diverse group of people to be counseling that leader, that CEO, it would have been much harder for him to get away with saying those things and doing those things.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that this is causing direct harm to people. Even if they are hired, they are being harmed inside of organizations when there isn't training and understanding on the eclectic, right? We could use that word, the diverse reality that it is to be human.
Right. In that space, you talk about not only curiosity, but empathy. And I think in that space, that probably will work. What do you mean by lead with empathy, and how does that contribute to building stronger teams? And it seems like if that boss had some empathy, they wouldn't have stole that money from you.
Right. Yeah, well, I think it also was insecurity problems, but it is what it is, right? So I think empathy asks us to lead with curiosity, and I can't divorce those two things. I can't for the life of me figure out how we're empathetic without curiosity, and I can't figure out how we're truly curious without empathy.
Okay.
Right? Because empathy requires us to consider someone else's lived experience as completely different than our own.
Right.
And to recognize that experience is valuable and valid, and we don't get a say in it. Right? And to say, hey, I'm going to sit with and make space for your lived reality. Right? I'm not going to deny that you exist. I'm not going to deny your lived reality. I'm not going to deny any. I'm going to make space for you and your lived reality. And that's when we can actually craft cultures where people are safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? Like without empathy, people are not safe. And we know it. You can feel it in your bones. You can feel it the minute you walk there. It's funny because I'm not going to name the town. I live in South Jersey. But my sister happened to travel to a town here in New Jersey. And she was like, have you ever been to this town? I'm like, yeah. It's funny how you can feel the reality of that town as soon as you drive into it, right? She's like, yeah. I was like, why don't you go look at some demographics, right? And she was like, oh, shoot. Right? And so we can feel culture. We can feel, right? You can feel someone's presence, even if your back is to the door when they walk into a room. You can feel who people are. We have powerful presence. We have powerful lived realities. And together, when we honor that, we create the kind of space where people aren't driving into our town and knowing they're not safe, right? We can create the kind of space where we're financially thriving, right? And it's necessary, right? Like empathy is necessary. And trying to understand the lived experience of people outside of us is necessary. And I like to break this down in hard numbers for people to sit with, right? So the United States, the population of the United States, Americans only make up 4.34% of the global population.
Wow.
I want us to sit with that, right? Only 4.34% of the global population. Number one, pin that. Number two, white people only make up between 7 and 16%, depending on who's assessing and what you classify as white, of the global population. That means 84% of the global population is not white. And we call it 95% of the global population is not American. Right? And so when we take these two truths and we sit with them, we recognize if we want to compete in an ever globalized economy and an ever globalized world, we cannot do so centering our experience as either Americans or, even more specifically, as white Americans. Right? And CFOs of the biggest companies in the world will tell you this, that they are not divesting from DEI because it would mean catastrophic things for their organizations. They're just renaming them because they can't. They can't. It would literally mean the destruction of their organizations.
Yeah.
And so when we can sit with that reality, we can recognize that there are so many other realities that we need to be considering in our everyday life if we actually want to create the kind of world where we all are seen, heard, understood, valued, and cared for. There's more than enough for everyone, for that reality to be true for everyone. There's more than enough. We just have to sit behind the creating organizations and cultures and, our society in a way that honors that, that honors that everyone is contributing and we all succeed when we succeed together.
I like when you stated those facts as truths, right? It's not something that can be, it's not an opinion.
Nope. Google it. Right. If you don't believe me, Google it.
Google, right? The great Googler.
Right.
These are truths, these are facts. And the way that you just shared that, when somebody's sitting down, actually sitting with that, I mean, there could be just a revelation of who they are in this world. And you speak about in the world of community. You speak about a community in leadership. How you define community in the context of business and leadership?
Yeah. So I define community as the human manifestation of an ecosystem, as the human version of an ecosystem, right? Because again, humans, we are nature. Shocking. I know. We never really sit with that. We never, ever consider that. We spend all of our time trying to separate ourselves from it. But we are nature, and we only live because of all of the rest of nature also living. So when it comes to our leadership, we have to recognize that we are meant to be fostering an ecosystem. Now, my favorite definition of an ecosystem, and the only one I ever use, is the one from National Geographic. Of course, they nailed it, right? So they define an ecosystem as a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and landscape, work together to form a bubble of life. I love that part. A bubble of life. Isn't that the whole freaking goal? If we're a leader inside of an organization, don't we want our people operating from a place of life, of our organization feeling like a bubble of life? Don't we know that creativity, innovation, and profitability will be a given inside of that type of culture, inside of that kind of organization, inside of that kind of community?
Right.
Yes, it will be. Right? We know that it is because we look at the organizations who are doing that and they are tremendously successful, right? With low turnover rates. I mean, they can't get rid of people, right? Like, and because turnover, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
extraordinarily
Of
expensive
course.
for
Yeah.
organizations, right? That investment is walked out the door, and now you've got to pay to train a whole other person. You've got a slow time, a 6-month time before they're really acclimated and kind of up and running. So you've got undue burden on other people who are likely to burn out and also leave. Like, it's a cascading, tremendous problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if we foster organizations as bubbles of life, that stops being such a problem, right? And innovation and profitability are just built in because people are bringing their whole thriving selves, right? So when I'm talking to leaders, whether it be on a stage or it be one-on-one, we're talking about that. This is not about control. This is not about you knowing everything. No one cares about those things. It's, what do you empower? What do you facilitate? What do you empower to be created? How do you empower your people? How do you support your people? Just like the land and the weather, which I propose is like the land is like leadership and the weather is like culture.
Okay.
Right? Inside of that ecosystem. Just like the land and the weather support us in real life. That's how leadership needs to show up inside of our organizations, consistently contributing to our people's thriving.
I love that. First of all, bubble of life. I was like, when I was ready, I was like, what is bubble of life? I mean, you kind of explain that here, but just that term by itself is very powerful, you know?
It's so good. When I read it, I was like, damn, National Geographic for the win. I'm totally stealing
right?
that.
Bubble of life. I love that. And you're talking about fostering I had it, but basically
fostering an ecosystem.
Fostering the ecosystem. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are some typical practical ways to actually foster the collaboration within the ecosystem and innovation in that kind of environment?
Value, dissent, and failure.
Value, dissent, and failure.
I just needed to let it sit there for a minute.
I had to receive it first.
I know. If we cannot, if you look at Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan, not picked for his high school basketball. We all know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then he got down to business. He got down to the fundamentals, which in my line of work is curiosity, respect, and accountability. But in his line of work, it's free throws, it's shooting the ball, it's playing horse, whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's getting the shots up, it's practicing the moves, it's all the basics. You know a great player because they constantly pay attention to the basics, the fundamentals. Right? That's how he became a great player. That's how he became one of the greatest players. I'm not going to argue whether or not he's the greatest or not. That's not what we're here for, right? One of the greatest players of all time, right? Yeah. In any sport. We're just going to open up and say of any sport,
it's
right?
It's arguably so, arguably.
Yes. Right? And so when we can understand that, right? That failure, he failed over and over and over again, but he pivoted quite literally in real life. He pivoted with his body, but he also pivoted in reality. Every time he came up against a roadblock, he pivoted. He learned more. He got back down to basics, and he learned the fundamentals of the game in a way that he could put anything together because it lived and breathed inside of him.
Yeah.
Right? When we want to be a great leader and we want to foster powerful organizations, we have to practice curiosity, respect, and accountability. Like, our life depends on it and our organization depends on it because it does.
Because it does.
And so we have to value dissent and failure because they are a natural part of what it is to be alive and to be human. And if we aren't, then we aren't valuing curiosity. We're valuing perfectionism, which is unattainable and inhumane fundamentally as a concept.
Yeah.
Because it's unattainable.
It is unattainable. And I think we're always, I think it's important to get the concept of always pushing for perfection.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Being perfect for greatness.
Yeah.
But being perfect is just, it's
because how many innovations happened by accident? How many times have we learned somebody was actually trying to create something else and accidentally created Post-its, accidentally created rubber, accidentally created, this, that, and the other thing.
Yes.
So many innovations have come from accidents where people were given the space and time and boredom. Access to boredom.
Yeah.
One of our most powerful tools as human beings when it comes to innovation, given access to boredom so that in fact they could see the thing that was right in front of their damn face and was a super profitable innovation, right? Yeah. Had they been required to clean up their area efficiently all the time, right? I'm not saying that we don't work for efficiency. I'm not saying that but we do not put those things as first. Those are just a part of, right? Yes, we need to build in efficiency. We need to make sure that we're doing things well, but we also need to make sure that we're making space for people's humanity and their creativity and their innovation, because it's in those moments when things are flawed that we actually discover incredible things.
Yeah. Within the flaws, we discover incredible things. You know, I guess the through line of what we're talking about here is that, you know, business is important. You know, it helps, you know, run the world and all that kind of good stuff. But who you're being as a human being really gives way to how that organization will be run, or how it will be built, or how it will thrive or not. And I think it's important, what we're saying here is to really work on yourself as a human being in different areas, so that whoever you are, you can bring that to your business.
Yeah. And you'll find your way as a leader and as an organization. You'll find your way much easier when you lean into who you are and empower your people to do the same.
Empower people to do the same. And for the new entrepreneurs, what's the most important lesson you've learned about leading with intention?
The pivot.
To pivot. I know that.
Whenever, yeah, right. Don't we all? You've been in business long enough. I've been in business for myself since 2016, coming up on 10 years, right?
See?
Given new information, I will always change my mind. Right? Given new information. I did. This is not what I didn't go to school for this, right? I didn't go to school to be a speaker. I went to school to be an interior designer. That's a whole conversation unto itself, because I had to pick something that was like gender appropriate.
Okay.
Right? It's not really what I wanted to go to school for, but I wanted to be a lawyer, but that's a whole nother thing, right? But, you know, I figured out that, you know, I could spend a decade researching these things, and I could look at scholarly work, and I could in fact have a very powerful and informed opinion based on my lived experience inside of the opposite of these things, and be able to bring a powerful perspective to the world. I pivoted my way right into being a public speaker accidentally, and then on purpose, right? At first it was like kind of accidental, right? And then it became definitely on purpose. And honestly, I'm so glad I'm not an interior designer anymore, because it's very dependent on the economy, right? Not everything is, but in a way that just was not great for my mental health. And so, you know, I pivoted my way here, right? And I pivoted my way through my career, and the transition between the two. I didn't just one day go to bed as an interior designer and the next day wake up as a public speaker. You have to bring your audience along with you. You have to, you know, there's so many steps inside of there. It's not an overnight thing. And I think that's really the reality is, if you're becoming an entrepreneur because you expect or want to be an overnight success, you will not be prepared for the number of pivots that it's going to take for you to actually be successful.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I gave some space to that for a minute. You talked about how at first it was accidental, right? And then it was on purpose.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? What does that look like? And I get the picture of it for myself.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
For anybody that's probably going through it and they're in that space.
Yeah.
What does that look like for them? Or what did it look like for you?
For me, it was like, what in the world am I doing? And how exactly do I do this? And if you aren't networking, by the way, as an entrepreneur, or if you're considering starting a business, you have to be networking. When people say your net worth is dependent on your network, I am telling you, there is no truer thing that has ever been spoken.
Yeah.
And you are going to need support in ways you don't even know how to conceptualize in this moment. And so network. But for me, it looked like having to pivot who I was networking with and how I was networking, the kinds of people I was connecting to and spending time with, getting myself around other speakers, being vulnerable enough to ask and curious enough, right? Vulnerability and curiosity are best friends, to ask the kinds of questions to help fill in the gaps of knowledge, studying other speakers, making sure I'm getting to spaces and really paying attention to how do they structure what they're talking about, so on and so forth. And then practice your craft. Just like a comedian goes to every bargain basement place they can get, every community center, every retirement home, every whatever, right? And they're practicing their craft, trying to form their tight 10. You need to do the same in your business. For me, as a speaker, it was getting on podcasts. It was, I shared with you earlier, I've been on more than 130 podcasts worldwide, right? You look for every opportunity to speak and you be intentional about that. And if you're starting a business, by the way, you should be speaking. I'm just gonna, you should be speaking. And it doesn't matter what feels safe to write to you, whether or not that's getting, as part of a Toastmasters club, so you can get comfortable with speaking, or you go and join a comedy troupe and you're doing improv and you're practicing, that way, or you're just getting in front of people if you feel comfortable and getting feedback. Always be curious and ask for critical feedback. Critical means they're going to tell you what you've messed up.
Yeah. I know you're about to say, but
I was going to say fucked up. You gotta know, right? I've never been so PG in my life.
You don't have to be.
I know, but I try not to curse too much because I'm like, people are going to be like, what is wrong with her? But I just practiced my craft, and I did so recognizing I was going to mess up, and I had to mess up to be good.
Yeah.
And that's it. You have to be willing to mess up to be good.
And you know what? That's a really good point. That I think that little capsule will allow someone to just continue to move forward in whatever it is, because the fear may be there, but you're gonna mess up anyway. And you might as well just take it on and just be it.
Do the best you can. Be as prepared as you can be. Gather as much information as you can and move forward with the information you have. And you're going to figure out where your blind spots are. It's going to become obvious. It's going to be super obvious at first. And as you go along, it might become less obvious. You might have to ask for critical feedback, right? I still do all the time because I want to know. Right. And it doesn't mean I have to take it on as gospel, but it's helpful information. Right. So that's the other thing. Don't take it too personally. It is super personal, but don't take it too personally.
Don't take it personal.
Take it as information. It's data. That's it.
Just flow.
Right.
When you started your business, I have this question here. When you started your business, what steps did you take to ensure it was built on strong foundation of ethical leadership and community? And I asked that question just so that people who are listening and watching, that they get that information and utilize it for themselves.
My hair's starting to look like Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. So what I did was spend 2 years researching. I looked at all kinds of organizations that I was aware of, that I wasn't aware of. I read the book. Francesca Gino wrote the book Rebel Talent. And she mentions a lot of organizations inside of that book and has a lot of different case studies. And I used that as a springing off point to do some deeper digging on those organizations and find what information I could from them directly, right? A lot of their founders have written books, or you can, see what people who've worked for them, podcasts I've been on, so on and so forth. You can get a lot of information. We live in the information age. Google it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you'll find out the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I spent 2 years when I rebranded my business and wrote my values. My values are public. They're on my website. You can look at them right now. And that's on purpose, to hold myself accountable, for other people to be able to hold me accountable, and for people to know, if you're working with me, this is the premise we agree on. Right? And that's powerful and that's important. And so I did that first because I knew that culture starts with one. It starts with me, right? I am the business at this moment, right? I have people that come in and contract with me and support me, so on and so forth, but I'm the business. I'm the face. I'm the voice. I'm the everything. well, what am I trying to bring with me? Because we bring culture with us everywhere we go. We bring who we are. Our presence comes with us. So what presence am I bringing with me? What shows up when I show up?
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question. What shows up when you show up? And if you don't know how to answer it, ask the people around you and be willing to hear some uncomfortable feedback.
Yeah. That's
right?
important.
Right? You have to be willing to hear that, because you're never going to be great until you're willing to have that feedback. Every most famous athlete in the world has 100,000 coaches around them. Like, they hire people to coach them and support them privately, personally, right? To strengthen conditioning coaches, so on and so. They've got people with the team. They've got people personally. They've got, people who help them with the psychology of the game, their own psychology, all of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, they are supported by a ton of different people who are telling them what the flaws in their game are. And you need people around you who you trust and know to be able to tell you what are the flaws in your game, so that you can, in fact, become the Michael Jordan of your industry, right? You can't be that if you aren't willing to take critical feedback.
Right.
It will never happen. You'll fall flat on your face, and you'll never get up, because you're going to fall flat on your face either way.
Either way.
Well, one way you get up, the other way you're just left there. One way you get up because people are there to help pull you up and help pick you up and help dust you off and help you reorient yourself so you know what direction to go, right? There's people who are going to show up for you when you most need them. So make sure you're networking. Make sure you're spending time finding the kind of people who are building the kind of organizations, no matter the industry, that you want to build yours like.
Very good information. That's very good. You've shared so much from where you started, being in the space you were in, going through your life and where you are now. What is your testament to who you are today?
That's a really good question. I didn't give up. And that sounds trite, and maybe it is, but I got it wrong so many times. I was loud and wrong for a very long time.
Loud and wrong.
Yeah. I grew up in a cult, right? I didn't know how much indoctrination existed inside of me. I just knew how to argue. I didn't know I didn't know how to argue from a place of truth or accuracy or research, right? And I had to teach myself those things. The necessity and the importance of truth and science and on all of those things, and leaning on experts in the field, right? And recognizing that being loud and wrong isn't really powerful, and it because you're coming from a place of ego. When you are actually no longer looking for external validation, you no longer need people to agree with your beliefs in order for them to be true for you. When you no longer need others' approval in order to decide whether you're doing the right thing, and you can sit present with your own self and your own reality and your own beliefs, and you can know them to be true, then you truly become powerful, because then you can show up as yourself rather than who somebody wants you to be. Right?
That's important right there. Showing up as your authentic self and not some mirage or pretend person that someone thinks you are, or who they want you to be.
And it's not about like rebellion. I don't believe rebellion's true. No one has authority over me that I don't give them. So there's no such thing as rebellion. I'm not rebelling against society, because society doesn't have power over me that I don't give it.
Well said.
Culture doesn't have power over me. I don't give it. When you stand in your own power, you do not give your power away. You stand in it. Right? And when you stand in your own power, you cannot be moved. Right? It doesn't mean you can't be it doesn't mean you don't change and learn. But you when you are standing in your truth, you cannot be moved from that truth. And so it's about nuance. It's about being powerful inside of ourselves and knowing how powerful that is. Yeah. And then you can change the damn world because you changed yourself. Right?
Coming into your own.
Right. You can't change anything but yourself, but you can change the world as yourself.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great. Talk about your business a little bit. What is your business?
Yeah,
Whenever.
I forget about that sometimes. I mean, because I am my business, so like I just, I consult, I speak, I conduct, and I believe in giving people access depending on where they are as a solopreneur, as a small business owner, so on and so forth. So I'm getting ready to add some more dates to my virtual workshops that are available through my website at a really reasonable price point. I don't even remember what it is, but I think it's like 65 or 55 or $65 for most of them, and they're hour-long workshops.
Okay.
To give people access, right? Because when organizations hire me, we're talking thousands, right? So like if a solo entrepreneur wants access to the same information, I condense it down. We do a virtual workshop. I still want people to have access to the information. So I have my virtual workshops. I have my workshops that I do in person, keynotes and consulting. And usually it's kind of like people bring me in to do a workshop, and then they hear what I have to say and they're like, so let's work together. And I'm like, let's do it.
Right.
So yeah, there's all different price points, and I work with nonprofits and so on and so forth. So, as much as I would love everybody to pay me what I wish they were paying me, there's always like, flexibility and negotiation that goes on in place. And I give this advice because of other entrepreneurs here. You don't have to do something for free. Someone might not be paying you money, but that doesn't mean it doesn't cost them something.
Right.
I'm not talking about sticking it to them. I'm talking about the fact that anytime somebody negotiates my price with me, number one, I do not offer them anything extra because people are going to ask for that. Don't do it. I'm looking directly in the camera when I say, don't do it. And if somebody's giving you those vibes, run.
Go the other way.
Run. They will drag you for everything you're worth, and you will be dissuaded from. And I get when you have to do what you have to do to survive. So caveat, right? But like, run.
Okay.
But when it comes to people negotiating your price, like for me as a speaker, okay, you can't afford to pay me. Well, I'm going to ask that you share a 500 to 1,000 word article that I've written both internally and with your external listserv. That means my name and face and my words are getting in front of possibly thousands or tens of thousands of people, depending on the size of the organization, right? Then I'm saying, hey, can you give me a meaningful introduction within 30 days of me speaking? Then I'm asking, can you give me a Google review? I'll send you the link. Right. Can you let me record myself, right? And be able to use your name in my marketing, so on and so forth. There are things that you can ask for. Think about that for yourself. And I talked that through with a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur and a speaker. And she and I came up, she told me about 3 of those things, and I added the whole article thing. Right. So have conversations. Yeah. Have conversations with other people. Figure out how you can take advantage of marketing with piggybacking on their marketing efforts that already exist. You're going to do the work for them, and don't write the article with flippin' ChatGPT. Don't do that. You have to write it.
You have to write it.
It has to be from your voice, because it's your voice that people are buying, not anything else. I've never written a single thing with ChatGPT ever. Don't even let it edit my stuff, because I'm just like horrified by whatever the hell it does. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem to help at all. Grammarly, yes. ChatGPT, no. So you can do things that bring value to you that won't cost the organization anything. So don't ever do anything, quote unquote, for free. Make sure that they're contributing and bringing value to that exchange. It's an energy exchange. Make sure it is an actual exchange. Otherwise, you will die on the vine, right? Like, and especially those free things, you can really take advantage of them. I mean, I spoke at an event last year. I still do free things, and I got 3 paid speaking engagements from it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to approach them. They didn't even approach me after I spoke. They reached out to me. They emailed me, and within 6 months, I had 3 other paid speaking engagements. So make sure you're if you're doing free things, doing them with people who value you and who want to see you succeed, and who are 100% in on doing whatever they can to help you succeed.
Help you out. Yeah. That's okay. That's really good. I was going to ask you our last question.
Okay. I'll try to answer really short.
It's okay, because I think it's fine. It's fine. We normally we give it 1.5 hours for, the conversation, but I think you really answered the question. So I don't even have to ask anymore, because you pretty much answered the question. I'll ask this then.
Sure.
What's one big thing or story or, I don't know, anything that you have on your heart that you would like to share with somebody who's listening?
We're in a time when people are not grounded. People feel ungrounded, unanchored. And there are people who are taking advantage of that and who are taking advantage of your exhaustion. Anytime somebody is presenting something to you that requires you to dehumanize or think less of someone else, you should be rejecting that ideology immediately and getting curious. And I want you then to imagine a world where I need us to spend time imagining what we want the world to look like. And activists will ask us to do this. Imagine it as if you have no idea who you will be in that world. Rich, poor, white, black, brown, indigenous, part of the LGBTQ community, whatever it is. Imagine you had no say in who you are and spend time caring about what that looks like and intentionally imagining that, because we can't build what we can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you need resources and you want articles that help you to imagine that world, or so on and so forth, I recommend you read 2 books. What If We Get It Right by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, and you read The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee. And then you look at scholarly work that focuses on intersectionality, on Kimberly Crenshaw's concept of intersectionality. Because we as human beings are never just one thing. And anytime somebody's trying to reduce us to one thing or invalidate someone's lived experience, for example, there's a conversation around what it is to be trans and that it's not real. But if you Google it, there's not just XX and XY as humans, right? It's XXY and XYY and XO. There's 2% of the population, same as our redheads, that are intersex, neither biologically male or female. There's an entire group of people in the Dominican Republic and in South America called Guevedoses, and are born with female-presenting genitalia, and then at puberty, their genitalia changes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is an entire biological reality that we are unaware of, and people take advantage of that in order to invalidate the existence of other human beings. And anytime we buy into that, the harm, the othering of someone else, the invalidation of someone else, we are harming ourselves as well, whether we realize it or not. And Heather McGhee points that out very clearly in The Sum of Us. She brings hard numbers to the conversation about what racism costs us as a nation. And I think we need to be focused on that. And Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, she interviews everyone from community activists to astrophysicists to farmers and journalists on what we can and could be doing, what we're already doing in small ways, but could be applied more broadly, that would stop and reverse global warming, and we'd be able to do it in a profitable way. It is actually profitable, more profitable than big oil, right? And so I need us to lean into these things and get curious, because it quite literally will be what saves us.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity, not loud mediocrity. We have to be curious, and we have to be respectful, and we have to be accountable. I'm begging us, like from the bottom of my heart. It will change your life. It changed mine.
Well said. We'll leave it there. Shana, how do we get in touch with you?
Good question. I'm sure it'll be tagged in the show notes, but you can reach me at www.consonate.world. That's key.world, not .com. You're going to be tempted to be like .world.com. That's not real. Just .world. Consonate.world. And my contact information is there. There's some videos on what I mean by curiosity, respect, and accountability. There's my company values, my personal values are there. The story about how I found the name of Consonate, which I think is interesting, so on and so forth. There's lots of information there. My speaker sheet. So everything you need is there.
It's right there.
Oh, and articles I've written and podcasts I've been on. Like
okay. And it's all there.
Yeah, it's all there.
It's been a tremendous conversation with you. Very enlightening and enriching to not only to the mind, but also to the soul. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for
For
having me. Like,
yeah,
this was great.
this was great.
It's really good.
I love when I have these great conversations.
Yeah.
It's so fulfilling and wonderful. So thank you for being here, being who you are, not only for yourself and your community, but for the world. And it does make a difference. So thank you.
Thanks.
And the question of the day to all you listeners and watchers, to all the entrepreneurs out there, what is the most important quality you think a leader should have to build a thriving community? Go ahead and drop those thoughts in the comments below. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new normal. And we'll see you next time. Before you go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Thrivewell journey. Every time you show up here, you're choosing growth, clarity, and the deeper work of becoming who you're meant to be in this world. And if you're ready to reconnect with what truly lights you up, I created something powerful that can help you. It's called the Empowered Path, 7 days to reclaim your purpose and passion. It's a beautifully designed, guided workbook that walks you through a week of powerful prompts, clarity building tools, and real mindset shifts. Now, you can get instant access to it today. It's a small investment for a huge return. Your energy, your clarity, your alignment. And if you want to take it deeper, check this out. I'm offering a limited number of free 30-minute purpose coaching sessions. No pressure, no pitch, just space for you to reconnect with your direction, your gifts, and what's next. So you can grab the guide and book your session at the link in the show notes. Let's not just go through the motions. Let's really walk this path on purpose. I appreciate you. And like we always say, let's make thriving our new normal. And I'll talk to you soon.